The setting is in Vignette Van Drummond's dining room in London, England. It is a cold and bitter evening in the year 1831. The family is gathered at the large house. Everyone hangs their coats on the coat rack, and Veteran seats the family at the table. They begin sharing their stories.
The discovery to be treasured by future astronomers.
That is quite an intriguing tale.
If I may, I have a story to share myself. While I was working at the animal hospital, a strange dog appeared just outside my walls, and he was wincing in such pain that I decided to take him in. I quickly examined him and found bite marks all over him. The creature seemed to feel accustomed to my likings, so I kept him. He's a true companion and does every little thing I ask. He is in no help in paying him off my great debt, though. I even brought him here with me, but he's in the guest bedroom.
Philip, you're so heroic.
I'm proud of you, son.
Shall we eat to reward this hard work?
I suppose we shall. Dr. Professor, gather some utensils and plates to set the table. Ladies, let's find some wine glasses. Trent and Philip, would you be so kind to fetch me a wine from the cellar?
Certainly.
We shall have a feast fit for a king. Let's get to it. The setting is Vitrin's wine cellar. It is dark and damp. The cellar is constructed of concrete. The ceiling has a leak in it. The water is constantly dripping from the ceiling. Every sound echoes in the cellar.
Which wine does Veteran fancy, Philly?
Veteran told me to grab some Vignette. Ah! I hate rodents.
Here's some Vignette. Head back to the dining room.
The setting is at the dinner table and it will continue upstairs. Trent and Philip are just arriving from the cellar.
Well, now that Philly and I have arrived, we may finally begin eating.
Yay!
Butler.
Oh my, what was that?
Sounded like it came from upstairs. Let's go check it out.
Others follow Philip upstairs to check out the mysterious noise.
Split up. Veteran and Mrs. Van Drummond checked the bathrooms. Mother and father checked the guest bedrooms. Trent, you check the library, and I'll check the master bedroom.
Everyone splits up to discover what the peculiar sound was. While this is occurring, a figure walks down the staircase.
It seems there's nothing to explain it.
Yes, indeed. Ah, it must be the darn construction of the Smith household next door. They're working day and night. If they could only give me one night of rest, that would satisfy my drowsiness. Party files down the stairs and back to the table.
Family is back in the dining room. They are all gathered around the table with their filled wine glasses in front of them. On account of being sick, Mrs. Wallace went up to the guest bedroom to take a nap.
Here, here. A toast for loved ones, friends, and family. Huzzah!
Now let's eat.
Relax! I'm a doctor. I'm afraid he's dead.
This can't be! This can't be!
I'm going to the police station 5 blocks away. Nobody touch anything.
While Dr. Professor Harold Wallace is going to the police station, the family stares at Veteran in shock. He returns with 2 detectives.
Hello there. We are the finest detectives around, and we look into any crimes in the community. I am George Wellington, more often called the Legman. This is my assistant, Peter Whimsy. He is better known as Wheels. Together, we are Wheels and the Legman. We have been detectives for precisely 20 years and have solved over 1,000 cases. As I mentioned before, we are here to determine the cause of this man's fatality. My partner, Wheels, will determine the cause of his death.
he a healthy man?
Yes, very. He was as healthy as the common man. He never was sick, except for the occasional cold. The bottom line is, he was exceptionally healthy.
Was he a happy man?
As jolly as St. Nick, he would always put a smile on all of our faces.
He did not perish from natural causes, and he must not have taken his own life. Wheels, we'll have to examine this more closely. I think we have a murder on our hands. If I may, I must ask a few questions before I carry on with my research. I suggest that you all be seated. This may take quite some time. Pray be very precise with your answers. I shall start with the lovely Mrs. Van Drummond. You know Veteran more than anyone. Was he very charitable and generous with his wealth?
Oh, yes, very. He never wanted to hurt anyone, and frequently donated to the poor.
Perhaps someone intended to steal his wealth. I understand that he owns a fortune. Who would be the one to receive his inheritance?
That would be Trent, sir. He used to receive 1,000 pounds after his father's death, and the Wallace family is to receive 200 pounds. But he is my son, and I know he would never do such a thing.
Enough! There shall be no accusations. I will not make my decision until I have found enough evidence. Do I make myself clear? Very well. Now, Trent, I assume you are not married. Have you been struggling financially?
I'm afraid I am. My boss is critical of my work in the lab and refuses to promote me with a raise. My salary is terribly low.
Now, Dr. Professor, I am aware that you are a very intelligent man. Doctors do make the worst criminals. Has anything troubled you recently?
I think not. Although I have been lending Trent a lot of money recently, which aggravates me completely. It helps him pay off his debt.
Now, Philip.
Why, George, we must have a look at this at once. It's an open letter, and it's here. The letter regards Mr. Van Drummond's income.
Oh, I find that quite peculiar. He never reads his mail.
Yes, very peculiar. Does anybody else remember any valuable evidence before Veteran passed on?
Oh, yes, I recall some valuable evidence. Veteran took a sip of his wine just before passing on.
Wheels, examine the wine glass for fingerprints.
I found 2 different fingerprints. This is Veteran's fingerprint. Whose wine glass is this?
Why, that's my wine glass.
Then that, right there, is your fingerprint on Veteran's glass.
I do not recall ever touching my father's wine glass.
We need more evidence to prove this. We may be examining a poison placed into the wine glass of Veteran and killing him in an instant. Wheels, what do you think of this?
I find your theory very believable.
Now, Mrs. Van Drummond, would you be so kind as to explain the happenings of tonight? Good. Pray give every detail.
Veteran and I were preparing for the guest's arrival just about 3 hours ago. Dr. Professor Harold Wallace and his wife had just shortly arrived after, followed by Philip with his highly trained dog that is sleeping in the guest room. Then came Trent. Each one of them hung their coats on the coat rack inside the closet by the door. And Trent placed his gloves on the table in the dining room. We immediately were seated once Trent had arrived, and had not moved until Peter had ordered us all to prepare for the meal. With the help of Mrs. Wallace, I had set the table. Dr. Professor Harold Wallace gathered utensils. Peter prepared the food, and Trent fetched a bottle of wine in the cellar with the help of Philip. I did hear a shriek from the cellar as they fetched the wine, but I never had the chance to ask.
It's only a rat.
Carry on.
Just as we were all seated, we heard a brief tapping noise, followed by a shattering noise, and we searched upstairs. Upon finding nothing of suspicion, we believed it was from the construction next door.
Ah, that is critical evidence you are speaking of. Pray be so kind as to guide us to where you first searched for the shattering noise.
George and Peter follow the direction at where she points in hope of finding the cause of the suspicious shattering noise. The scene is upstairs in Veteran's bathroom, where they find a slightly opened, very small cabinet, just above the floor, along with a cracked bottle of medicine.
Well, Legman, what do you think of all this? I suppose that maybe someone with access entered Mr. Van Drummond's bathroom, picked out the dangerous medicine, and used it to poison Veteran's wine.
Well, I suppose that could be true, Wheels. Why is there slime covering the medicine bottle?
I do not know that answer.
It must have been impossible for one of the family members to break into this cabinet when they were all seated at the table from the beginning of their arrival.
Ah, good point, Legman. Good point indeed. But now we have no current theories that branch off the fact that he was poisoned.
Be patient, Wheels, be patient. Murders don't uncover themselves. I would like to investigate the cellar before I can come to a conclusion.
George and Peter had just returned to the dinner table from their search upstairs.
Trent and Philip, would you be so kind to show us the wine cellar?
Yes, of course.
Indeed.
Have your handcuffs ready, Wheels. We might need them.
The four of them head into the dark, damp basement and into the wine cellar. They discover a puddle of liquid with a dead rat in the middle.
Ah, it is arsenic rat poisoning.
But who would carry a bottle of arsenic rat poisoning and kill a rat in my father's cellar?
And there, my friend, is the answer to our little mystery. It can be no one other than Philip Wallace. Wheels, handcuff him at once. Let us go upstairs to further explain this to everyone else.
They return to the dining room with Philip in handcuffs as George shares his theory.
Philip here is the cause of Veteran's misfortune. Now let me explain. Upon his arrival, Philip discovered a letter addressed to Veteran to acknowledge Veteran's income. He was reminded of his own debt and realized if he were to murder Veteran and frame Trent, his family would receive the entire inheritance of £1,200. He quickly hid the letter inside the fireplace, hoping no one would find it is open. Philip then took his trained dog and brought him to the guest room. There he trained the dog to break into the medicine cabinet in the bathroom and return to the guest room upon a tapping noise, such as tapping underneath the table. This would create an ingenious distraction for him to make his move, although the dog had left his saliva all over the bottle. Once the family had begun to search for the solution to the shattering noise, Philip snuck downstairs and poured arsenic rat poisoning into the wine because no one else carries a bottle of rat poisoning besides Philip. To frame Trent, he used the inside of his glove to print a fingerprint onto the wine glass, but failed to undo the inside-out glove that still sits on that very table.
Alright, that's enough. I confess to my crime.
Son, but why?
I cannot stand my debt anymore, so I murdered Mr. Van Drummond to receive all of his fortune. I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling detectives.
Ha! Philip, I will call the police to come pick you up. You will be spending the rest of your life in prison. Well, Wheels, I think our job here is done. Shall I treat you to a cup of tea?
Of course.
Philip snuck downstairs and poured the arsenic rat poisoning in the wine.
Was he a healthy man?
Yes, very. He was never sick except for the occasional cold. The bottom line is, he was... Oh man, I forgot the whole thing.
Sorry.
Was he a healthy man?
Sorry.
Was he a healthy man?
Yes, very. He was as healthy as the common man. He was never... Michael!
Was he a healthy man?
Yes, very. He was as healthy as the common man. He was never sick except for the occasional cold. The bottom line is, he was exceptionally healthy.
What the heck, Mike? It's not even that.
Was he a healthy man?
Oh my god.
Was he a healthy man?
My.
Dad, stop!
Was he a healthy man?
Yes, very. He was as healthy as the common man. He was never sick except for the occasional cold. The bottom line is, he was exceptionally healthy.
Oh my
Was
gosh,
he
are you
happy?
you guys are killing.
Ones.
Huzzah! Now let's eat.
It's okay. I'm a doctor. I'm afraid.
No! Why?
Yay!
Butler.
Wake up.
Fat any day now.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait.
Any day.
I'm gonna wait.
I said not to wait.
I wanted to wait till like the fourth one.
As soon as he
Why?
starts pouring the first one, you do
Alright,
it.
somebody needs to dump the cranberry juice back in because of this.
Hey!
Butler.
God.
Each one of them hung their coats on the coke rack.
I said Coke.
This bedroom.
Philip, you're so heroic.
I'm proud of you, son.
Shall we eat? Provide.